Hello, listeners and fellow book lovers. Welcome to The Book Snug, a bi-weekly conversational podcast about books and the reading life. My name is Stephany.
And I'm Julia.
We're a mother and a daughter who love reading and talking about books, the ones we adore and the ones we don't. We're delighted you're here, so grab your favorite hot drink or ice-cold beverage and settle in for another cozy, bookish chat.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Julia.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. Hi, Nana.
Hello, Julia and Stephany.
Hi, Mom.
How are you?
I'm just fine. I'm so glad to be here.
Yes, we're excited to have you here. This is such a fun episode, and I think it'll be so special for Mother's Day.
Yes.
Hello, listeners and friends. Welcome to the Book Snug, or welcome back to the Book Snug. For today's episode, we are talking about sharing a love of reading through generations, specifically looking at mothers and daughters and how that's impacted us in our own personal reading. We have Nana back on the podcast today. She was our first guest on the podcast, and we're excited to have you back. Before we dive into our full conversation, what's everybody drinking?
Go ahead, Mom. You go first.
Well, I'm drinking Black Rifle coffee, the Freedom Fuel line. And it's a new coffee to me, and I've already had enough coffee this morning. So if I begin to talk really fast, please excuse, because I'm fueled up.
Fueled on freedom.
With freedom fuel.
What are you drinking, Mom?
I am drinking, I think it's Stash's coconut mango tea. I wanted something fun and flavorful this morning, so that was my choice. How about you? What are you drinking?
I stole one of your Plurked teas.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the Nordic green tea.
It's very nice and refreshing.
Yeah. Very nice and light.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think this episode is going to be just chatty. There's not really much of a roadmap to things. I think we want to start off with some questions, just kind of thinking about how we've seen reading passed down to us.
Mm-hmm.
So, Nana, do you have any memories of your mom reading?
I do. My mother read quite a bit. And I have three memories of three books that she read from my childhood. I never could remember them all. My mom was really busy. She had three big gardens, canned, froze, looked after us children, took care of the yard. She was a flower maven and was in flower shows all the time. So when she read is a mystery to me, actually. But I particularly remember a couple of things. One is she loved the author Taylor Caldwell, who was a very popular author in the 50s and 60s. And just a couple of her books, Great Lion of God, which was a biography of St. Paul. Dear and Glorious Physician, that was a biography of the physician Luke in the Bible. And she also wrote these epic kind of historical, generational novels. One I remember is Captains and Kings.
Okay.
Mother read them all. I read them all.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually a pretty young reader as soon as I could handle big chapter books and understand what they were doing. I remember her reading Lady Chatterley's Lover by D.H. Lawrence. And the reason I remember that is she talked about it with so many people, probably one of her many close female friends. And I think she was alternately scandalized by it and tantalized by it. So I do remember that very clearly. And then I remember when she read East of Eden by John Steinbeck, because it, again, if you've ever read John Steinbeck, there's, I don't know, troubling things in his novels, sometimes scandalous things. And so, again, I can remember her talking about that with my dad and her friends. So my mother had a wide variety of reading taste and a wide variety of reading experiences. And so I'm sure I caught that from her. I'm sure it's something that's in our genes.
Yeah. I wonder if it is in our genes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about that too.
I've never heard of Taylor Caldwell, so I just wrote the name down. I'm going to check out the books.
She was a very widely read, very famous author of the time, and has a pretty wide span of work, body of work.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to check her out.
You said that you're not really sure when she read because she was so busy. But were there any books that the two of you talked about together? I know that you said Taylor Caldwell, but was there anything else?
I think over the years, yes, but I can't really exactly call any to mind.
Okay.
I'm sure we did because Mother kept reading over the years. And I'm sure, although my tastes are different from hers, I'm sure we hit on one or two that we liked and talked about together, but I can't really think of one. Sorry. I wish I could. At this time in my life, I wish I could.
Yeah.
I remember my Nana, had a bedroom at our house in Willow Street, and she would come and stay for long periods of time. And her whole one back wall was just bookshelves. And I remember going in and looking at the covers, and some of the covers were...
Were they a tad racy?
I think they were like big, long soap opera-ish series of pirates and kings in Ireland and stuff like that. But I do remember really chunky books on those bookshelves with some very, very crazy covers.
So like the mass market romance with the
Yeah. But these were hardback, With the women with the flowing hair and the men with the flowing hair and their chests hanging out.
Yes, those are, that is pretty scandalous.
Well, when you're 10, 11, 12 years old.
You get scarred for life. Mom, when you think about your childhood of reading, what are some memories that you have with Nana and reading and kind of those memories together?
Well, I would say overall, I have many memories of Mom reading while she's stirring the spaghetti, reading in the lounge chair in the living room in the afternoons when she's home. I mean, Mom worked a lot, but Mom was a nurse, and so she could work second and third shifts too. So I have many memories of you, Mom, being home with us. I remember going to the pool. Mom would take us to the pool in the summer in the afternoons, and we'd swim all afternoon, and Mom would sit on the blanket and read all afternoon. Yeah. Many, many memories of Mom reading. And then, I mean, I just feel like we were encouraged to read because we saw her reading all the time.
I mean, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, I think a lot of my memories of reading come from watching you guys read, of either at the beach, seeing you guys so engrossed in a book that we can't get your attention for minutes on end, or audiobooks, or coming home from school and Mom, you're listening to an audiobook so loud that I can't get your attention. Or some of my fondest memories growing up are listening to just the two of you have conversations about books. And because they weren't books that I'd read, I just would sit and listen to you talk about the characters and the plots. And I just really enjoyed those conversations. And now it's cool that I get to be a part of them.
I think it's funny that you mentioned about reading and you trying to get my attention and you can't do it. I think I did learn that from my mom because when Mom was reading, she was reading. We were not going to get any kind of engagement. And I for sure have inherited that trait. I know it. I'm very good at focusing and blocking out. Like I have very strong filters.
Which is so funny because I didn't get that. I'm annoyed by the slightest bit of anything when I'm reading.
I also have particular books I remember Mom reading. Sacajawea, which was, I don't know, in the 80s, was it the 80s? Really thick book, like long history story of Sacajawea showing, who were the two explorers? Lewis and Clark. Yeah. And Clan of the Cave Bear. I remember that book.
Gene
being in our house. What are some of the others? The Thornbirds?
Thornbirds. And that is a book I talked about with my mother. Another scandalous book because the love affair was between the protagonist and a priest.
And she was young.
Scandalous, and she was a very young girl.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
when
couldn't finish
happened.
that book because I just couldn't. I couldn't do the romance. Yeah, I tried. I did try to read it, but I couldn't do it.
I don't want to give anybody the impression that my mother loved scandalous stories, but it appears that she may have.
We're just forcing you to
Yes.
come to that
Yes.
conclusion.
Oh, my.
Well, if you're a well-rounded reader, sometimes I think
Yes.
you do dip into the
Yeah.
scandalous.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And what was scandalous at that point in time no longer is.
Right.
Mm.
Oh, exactly.
Mhm.
It no
Yeah.
longer is.
Yeah.
I would think Girl with the Pearl Earring was one that Stephany and I talked about
Yes.
and loved. Many
Yes.
people didn't because it was so slow
And quiet.
quiet and character
Yeah.
driven,
Yeah.
but we loved it. And then we went and saw a movie, which was also very slow
Yes.
and
With
quiet
Collen
and-
Firth
Yeah.
and Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
Colin Firth is in that?
Yes.
Yes.
He plays the artist for Vermeer.
Mhm.
But what the funny thing is it was not a movie that was widely distributed. So we had to go see it at the Skinny Mini, which was like an art theater in Millersville near the college.
Oh, it's not there anymore
No,
either.
It's a nightclub or something.
Yeah.
But anyway. Yeah, that was a whole experience. But I loved that book.
Mhm.
I still go by my bookshelf and touch it every once in a while.
Sometimes you just have to with certain books. Okay. I think we've talked about this a little bit, but it sounds like just watching our mother's reading had an impact on us. But was there anything else that you think that they did to encourage reading, like talking about it or reading together at night or things like that? Because I know for us, Mom, you read to us at night, and I think that instilled in us reading is an important part. But I'm curious if there's anything, like any other examples.
Well, my mother read to us every lunchtime. Like we had to come in and sit down and have lunch. My sisters and I and Mom. I mean, she made lunch. It was on the table and she would call us in from playing. And when we were done, she always read something to us. Now, she stopped it once we got somewhat older and the storybooks that she had wouldn't interest us. The one I remember came to mind the minute I saw this question was The Pokey Little Puppy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And love it to this day. I love seeing the cover. I love seeing the puppy smell the strawberry. And he got lost.
Yeah.
And then he was found. So just a sweet story. But they're the storybooks that she read to us. Pretty traditional children's books, but it was every lunchtime. So I do remember that. And then this was a trip for us. My mom took us to the library in Lancaster.
Wow.
And we lived in Chester County
Yeah.
near Alverson.
Yeah.
So she took us to the library. And then later on, when we lived in Quarryville and the bookmobile came, we went, Mom and I went. My sisters were not readers.
I was about to ask.
Still aren't.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I know of. That I know of. But Mom and I, we haunted the bookmobile.
Well, that's a very strong memory I have, Mom, of you taking us to the library, especially in the summertime.
Yeah.
And I think not just Lancaster County Library, but I think our library, our elementary school library was open, and you would take us there to get books in the summertime. And we participated in the library book, like, what's the word I want?
Like a challenge.
Book challenge, yeah. The library book challenges, and then you got little prizes at the end, and yeah, I definitely remember that. And you and Dad would read to us in the evenings, at least when we were little. I can't remember the name of the book, but it was a family of monsters or
The Little Brute Family.
The Little Brute Family. Yes, I do remember that book for sure. We read that a lot, and yeah. I feel like you encouraged us to read. We were allowed to get the Scholastic books when the book flyer came home and we could go through and pick what we wanted. We were always allowed to get Scholastic books. So those are some memories I have of just being encouraged to read.
Yeah, I mean, I have some of the same. The library too. The amount of summers that we spent at the library, Mom, that you would take us either for a fun Friday or just because, and then you made us do all the library actual summer challenges so we could go to Dutch Wonderland or Hershey Park. The amount of stress you put us under to get those little projects done.
Oh, come on. It wasn't that bad. Mark acted like he was being murdered.
But when it's summer and we don't want to do anything, we just want to go to Hershey Park.
I know, but you got to go for free, and believe me, I appreciate it.
Well, I'm not arguing that point. But the library, definitely, I've read some books that have really stuck with me. I got at the library.
Yeah, me too, for sure.
Yeah. And I could actually mark how I got older, moving from the children's section with the benches with the books all around the benches.
The circle you could sit in, yeah.
And then moving into the shelves on the side, and then graduating into the teen section. So like I could really kind of mark
your growing up through the library.
Yeah. And then because that's the time that we were at, walking along the wall of the CD audiobooks.
Yes.
And being able to pick which one we wanted to. Is this one too long? How many CDs is this?
Yeah.
Hey, we're going on a trip. Let's pick a CD.
A good long one.
Yeah. Definitely one of those. I remember that very clearly, the smell of the library too. But I think just being surrounded by a strong history of readers, of reading at the beach, or talking about books all of the time, or reading at night, and there's a book on here we're going to talk about, but like, Nana, you reading to me on a road trip.
Oh, I remember that so well.
Yes. Of just being surrounded by this heritage of reading. I think I was doomed from the very beginning. To see bookshelves at the house all the time, or piles of books, or I was doomed.
And we did. I mean, Jay and I read to you and your brothers every night. And I remember the very first chapter book I read to you was Despereaux.
Yes.
And Aaron might have been
itty bitty.
2.
Itty bitty.
And even he wouldn't sit still, but he definitely listened to the story.
Yeah.
And forever after that, until you guys were teenagers, we read at nighttime, plus audiobooks in the car, going places. Yeah.
Yeah. We even at one point, we were reading Aragon at night, and you took it to the beach, and we finished it at the beach because we were enjoying it so much.
Yeah.
There are quite a few books that the three of us have read together. Yes. And firstly, I think that's so cool.
I do too.
And
I feel like we should bring my sister Kelly into this, because she also gets pulled into this circle, but she doesn't quite fit into the mother, daughter, granddaughter line. So she isn't here for the conversation, but it's definitely a family thing going on with books.
Right. And she is an upcoming guest.
Yes.
So we're not including her from the conversation entirely, just today.
And I just want to bring in Stephany has a daughter-in-law that reads.
Two. I have two.
And Paige, who will soon
Oh, yeah, you're right. Paige isn't my daughter-in-law yet. Yeah.
But still, I just think what happens is, I think, for my mind, there's a personality profile that's a reader.
Well, and April reads too.
And April, my daughter-in-law, April reads.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say, this came to my mind when Stephany talked about the little brute family. That book has gone generation to generation, because I read it to Meg and Molly, who would be my granddaughters. Not sure. It's very possible when you all were at my house in the yellow room, all sleeping together. But April and Andy read it to their children.
Yeah.
And so it just, it follows down.
Well,
my son came
book
to me and said, what was that book about those little monsters? So I found it for him.
I just thought of another book too, Mom. Ricky Tikki Tembo.
Yes, No Saw Rembo.
Cherry Berry, Richie Pip, Perry Pembo. The kids had that book too.
That is an unlocked memory that you just got to. Thank you.
And that's a book that you read to us, because we would just roll on the floor laughing every time you read the little boy's name.
And I would feel so bad for him stuck in the well that it was a very upsetting experience to read that book.
And that is why little Chinese boys have such short names now.
Yes, and it certainly makes sense.
Listeners, that's a quote from the book.
Yes, I'm not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a
The
quote
whole
from the
story is the explanation
Yes.
of why.
Yes.
But I think what I wanted to pull together and say, I don't know who made this quote. I think it's attributed to different people, that we read to know we're not alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think you want to, that's something that you believe and care about, that you want to pass on to the people that you love.
Yeah.
That there are ways to understand the human experience that come through books.
Yeah.
Where you say, yes, yes,
Yeah.
I know about this. And thank you for writing it down and making it clearer,
Yeah.
more real. So you want to pass that on. So it's so gratifying then when you all talk about the same book and you all saw that in there.
Yeah.
We're not alone.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, to take it a step further too, I think there's, and you were getting at this, Nana, with the Little Brute family, that I think that there's something beautiful in receiving a book that has been read by so many people over so many lines. Like I have books that I have read and I've loved that the spine is cracked, the pages are all frayed. And that's a book that I would love to receive from somebody because of all the things underlined and all the notes in it. I think it says a lot about a singular person too, and not just the human experience, but like this book spoke so loudly to somebody for some reason or other as well.
Yeah.
So this list of books that we have, and it's quite an extensive list of books that we've shared. I think we should start with The Marriage Portrait because that's the one that got you on the podcast in the first place, Nana.
Yes. Yeah.
And I know we talked about it a little bit in the episode, but you're the one who read it first and you then suggested it to us. What was it in that book that made it stand out for you and that you wanted to share it with us?
Without getting into a big complex explanation, I read that book and my heart so hurt for Lucretia, who is the young, very young woman that the story is about, actually, and how this woman of such beauty, such talent, such promise died so early and probably died as a result of the prejudice and the position of women in that time and place.
Yeah.
And so I just felt like I needed to talk about that with somebody.
Yeah.
And plus, so beautifully written.
Yeah.
And the character, every character, right down to the least consequential ones were so well developed
Yeah.
and added so much to the story because Maggie O'Farrell does not disappoint, no matter what. And so Maggie O'Farrell's the author, the author, by the way, for the listeners. But yes, how my heart ached for that young woman, and how, as the story developed and the ending, how in some way she got back.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just something to talk about with other people, and knowing that women have experienced this for millennia.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was just all wrapped up in this one story, The Marriage Portrait. So that's, we could go on and on again.
Yeah.
I know.
It's such a discussable book.
It is.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
And I think that's why we share. We share, oh, you have to read this.
Yes.
Because I want to talk about
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
Or just because, like, another book on our list is Other Birds by
Yes.
Sarah Addison Allen. And I just share that because it was such a delight. And I want other people to be able to enjoy just the sheer pleasure of the story.
Right.
So I think that's why I share suggestions too.
Yeah.
That particular book had such beautiful, magical kinds of things in it, like the Delawisps, the birds.
The birds.
Yeah. And just the things like that. I know there was a ghost, but nothing
least
scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And such lovable, complex, kind of, I don't know how to say this. They were a group of misfits. Yeah.
Yeah. Who just weren't quite
quirky
living their
people.
best
Yeah.
life yet,
Yeah.
but
Quirky people.
yeah,
Yeah.
but they wanted to. Yeah,
And isn't that all of us?
it is. It is. And then there are some significant surprises in
Yeah.
the plot.
Yes.
And she writes it in such a gentle way
Yeah.
that you're past it and you think, no, wait, what did I just read? Did I really
Yes.
just read that? What's going on here?
So that's one for pure enjoyment,
Yeah.
which Sarah Addison Adler always gives you a book with pure enjoyment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is magical realism, listeners. So if you don't care for that.
Yeah.
But we all did.
Yes.
We all read it.
I
and
love
shared
that
it.
100%.
Yeah, it's swallowed me whole.
Yeah.
Completely. Another one on the list that we have is The Help by Catherine Stockett.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while since I've read this one.
Me too.
So I don't even really remember.
I'm sure Mom read it first.
Right. I was just trying to think about how I read it. Like in terms of like, was it your recommendation? Or did I
Probably.
see Nana reading it?
I'm pretty sure that Mom recommended it to
Yeah.
me, and then I suggested you read it, or
Okay.
you heard us talking about it.
Something like that.
And then
yeah.
did we see the movie together? I was trying to think, did we go see the movie together?
The three of
I
us?
never saw the movie.
Oh, okay. So
Oh,
maybe.
it's so good,
so.
Nana.
Is
Yes,
it?
it is very
Yes.
good.
Makes me cry every time.
Then I'm pretty sure you and I saw it
Okay.
together. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, here's a book that describes a human experience that I have no
Yeah.
familiarity with.
I never would be able to.
And
No.
actually was horrified.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And yes, I will never be able to understand the Black experience in
Mm-mm.
America. And I
Mhm.
admit that, listeners, whoever's listening,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I admit that. And yet it gave you a glimpse as you read these Black women's stories
Mhm.
of what happened and still happens,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
believe,
What they have to
in
endure.
this country, what they
Yes.
have to endure, and how so many times endured it with dignity and grace,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and got back
Mm-hmm.
sometimes in surprising ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Skeeter, I think, was the writer. Wasn't that her name? Her nickname,
Yes.
Skeeter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
The
she
young girl.
interviewed Black women to know what their experience was working with probably wealthy white families
Mhm.
their
Yeah.
whole life.
Mhm.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that there again, I needed someone else I knew to read that and share that experience and try to understand that experience in a way that changed me
Yeah.
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
And I know there's criticisms of that book,
There are.
but
Mhm.
still.
It still did good things
Yes.
for you.
Right.
That's
And
how I look
that's-
at it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to
Yeah.
say. Like,
Mhm.
I know, Mom, you and I have had the conversation about The Color Purple,
Yes.
but The Color Purple does kind of the same things for me that The Help does, that it allowed me to think about things that I never would have encountered regularly. And I know that there are criticisms on that book because similar stories exist.
Yes.
So
yeah.
just because I think The Help gets criticism doesn't mean that it's not impactful to people who read it,
Yes.
because it can help people reevaluate things that they didn't know that they were holding on to.
Right. It can change your perspective in a good way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And for me, that part of The Color Purple was not my issue. I just
Sure.
did not care for how it was handled. There are other books I felt handled the topics
And
better.
that's what I
Yeah.
mean, because you have read other
Yeah.
similar stories that's kind of where that falls.
Right.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about Walk Two Moons.
I didn't. I'm moving. I'm skipping around on purpose.
Gotcha. Because that has such a special connotation.
It does.
Yes.
It does. Well, we can bring that up next. That's fine. So, Walk to Moons is actually one that I think I read first. And
You
then
did?
recommended.
You did. And then I think I read it, but unrelated to how you and Nana experienced
Right,
it. You
right.
just asked me to read it because you wanted me to know the story.
Yeah. Yeah. So I read this on my own in 5th grade, and then we read it as a class a couple months later. It was a weird serendipitous moment, but and then you took us on a road trip to Wyoming that summer.
Nana did.
Yes, Nana. And in the book, I think we literally just talked about this book in our last episode. They go on a road trip. And so I thought, what a fun story to listen to while we're road tripping. And then you read it aloud to us during the trip. We didn't finish it though on the road
we
trip.
didn't. You know what? We should.
Yeah,
At some point, we almost did.
we did.
What I loved about it is here we are, grandparents, hauling our grandchildren, our granddaughters across the nation
Mm-hmm.
to the West.
Mm-hmm.
And the book is about grandparents who take their granddaughter
Yeah.
west to find their mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We weren't looking for
No.
your moms, but
Just adventure. We were looking for an adventure.
But it's just the parallel was so good and
Yeah.
such a, we would pair up an apple, cut it into pieces, share it all around, even with the dog,
Yep.
and read the book. And even Pappy listened. I shouldn't say even Pappy, but he, it was good for him as well.
Yeah.
Well, and you read a lot in the car too, so he
Yes.
didn't really have a choice.
Yeah, right.
But it's a good story. You would get drawn.
Yes.
You'd be hard pressed not to get drawn in.
Right. Sharon Creech is really good with just pulling you in right away. And Meg, who was on the road trip with us too, my cousin, isn't a reader either. And I just remember that she just sat enraptured for that too.
Yes, yeah.
And you also, Nana, I think you started calling us chickabiddies for a little bit too. Which is a phrase used in the book that the grandparents use.
Yeah, well, you seem like a couple little chickabiddies.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, how old were you, Julia, when you went on that trip?
I was maybe 10 or 11
I was
in
going to
fifth
say
grade.
you were still in grade school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Meg would have been even younger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. When did you
Great
read it, though? Was
experience.
it still that summer or was it a little bit later?
No, I think I read it. You read it and told me you wanted me to read it, and I read it pretty soon after that. I might have read that when you were reading it as a class in school.
Another one on here is The Memory Keeper's Daughter by Kim Edwards. Now, this is a big story.
Yeah. Mom read this first years ago and told me about it and gave me your copy, and I read it. I don't think I have the copy.
Because I have your copy.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so Julia has a copy, but you just recently read it.
I read it last year.
The story, I'm sure, is much fresher in your brain than it is in mine.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a hard story, partly because it's my line of work. And so I just felt things a little bit heavier, but it's the story of twins born and one has Down syndrome. And it's at the time when anybody with any type of disability were institutionalized.
Yeah.
And the nurse that delivered this particular baby was given the order to take her away, and she didn't. And she just took her and raised her. And there was a lie then that was kind of given that the other twin didn't survive. And so there's this thing of grief that exists throughout the book, and this lie that kind of tears a family apart. And it's a really hard story to read when you know that probably was something that actually occurred.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't remember hearing you guys talk about this book much.
It was some time ago.
Yeah.
And I think the reason I remember this book so well is I had a period of time where I wasn't reading because I was in school trying to finish up my degree, my master's degree. I think it was maybe even before that. And I was working, I was going to school, a lot was going on. And I think I might have been in the bookstore and picked up Memory Keeper's Daughter, because it has kind of a pretty cover.
It does. It's a very striking
Yes.
cover.
Yeah.
And
a little girl's dress.
Yeah.
Love the title, whatever it meant, and probably read the blurb and thought, oh, I need to read this. And then as a mother, knowing that somewhere you thought your daughter died.
Right. Which is
And,
bad enough. Yeah.
The dad who actually asked the nurse to take the baby and put her in an institution, his whole life he kept memories of her.
Yeah.
Especially once he found out that the nurse didn't.
Right.
He kept some letters and some other
photographs.
things.
Yeah.
And so he is the memory keeper.
Yeah.
But he's just that whole idea of this daughter living someplace, no matter what her limitations, and that you don't know. But, the little girl, Phoebe, her name was, she actually turned out to be a pretty highly functioning young lady with Down syndrome.
A lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
With a lot of opportunity, even got married, actually.
Yeah.
But just this life of deceit and grief and pain.
Yeah.
It ruined their marriage.
Yes.
Of course
the twin,
it did.
Paul, just that whole thing.
Yeah.
Of course you want to talk about that
Right.
with
Yeah.
somebody.
Yes. Yeah.
And share that beautifully written book about things that used to happen that are unthinkable
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why that one got shared.
Yeah.
And yes, our daughter Kelly also read it. And There was a movie made about it, which I never saw.
I never saw that either.
I didn't know there was a movie.
Well,
I didn't.
I'm not sure it could do it justice.
Well, yeah. And it's a hard story.
Yes.
Sometimes I just can't gear myself up
right.
to go through that emotional trauma.
Right. Yeah.
Well, we're getting quite a Venn diagram here of our where our tastes overlap.
Right. Well, because looking at the next one is Peace Like a River by Leif Enger. We're in for a wild ride here.
I loved this book, and Mom recommended this. You recommended this to me, Mom, and I just gobbled it up. It was just the writing was just gorgeous, and that is definitely like a top tier thing for me. The story was beautiful. I loved the dad. I loved the siblings. I loved the road trip. I'm a Quest girl, so that worked for me. And the picture of heaven that is described in this book, I just loved it. I loved everything about this book. It was wonderful. And we've brought it to the show before. Yeah. So thanks, Mom. Thanks for recommending.
You're so welcome. You could not help but want to share that with people.
Right.
And I just want to say it's narrated by an 11-year-old boy. 11 or 12.
His perspective.
And that makes it super special.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I read this book at a time in my reading life where I wasn't prepared for it because I had come right out of Crazy Rich Asians into Peace Like a River.
That's
and
quite a shift.
Right. Yeah. So I think it was a little bit slower than I was prepared for. I think if I were to revisit it in a little bit, like in a couple years, that I would have a very different and much better experience than when I first read it the first time. The story is still fabulous, but I think it took me a lot longer to get into it and to stay with it than I think if I had read it at a more appropriate time in my reading time frame.
Leif Enger has, or Leif. Is it Leif or Leif? I don't know. I didn't look it up.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, anyway, Mr. Enger has a new book that has just come out. I cannot remember the title of it, but I can't wait to read it. It sounds so good. It's going to be another quest. It's a dystopian world. A husband is looking for his wife, and he's traveling all over the place on one of the Great Lakes, right, Mom? Yeah. I can't remember the name of the book, but we'll put it in the show notes. Yeah. I am really looking forward to reading it because I know the writing is just going to be stellar.
Next one is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. We probably could have organized these a little bit better.
Who read this first?
I think I may have.
Did you?
Because I know I was the last to read it.
I don't remember. I don't remember who read it first, but it was good. It was very good.
Just the heroine.
Yeah.
I think her name is Kaya.
Kaya.
Raised herself.
Yes, pretty much.
So brave, so courageous. And so right away you want somebody else to read that so you can toss around this character who survived in spite of a lot of odds.
Yeah.
And it has like a double thing going on. There's a murder investigation going on over here and this young lady growing up over here. And, the twain meet, but hey.
Well, and then too, and I just said this, that gorgeous writing is like crack for me. And this book also had that. The nature writing, I think that's where Delia Owens really shines. And we visit North Carolina pretty regularly. And so I could just so picture what she was describing. And what a great book. And I know Delia Owens
has her own
has
set of
thing going on. But I can separate that from the story with no issues. I know some people can't do that.
Sure.
Yeah.
This one was extra special for me because I bought it at the bookstore at the beach.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so when I'm thinking about the story, I think of a hot, muggy August, summer as I'm reading it. And it just kind of pairs those memories really, really nicely together. Yeah. This is another book that I'm not sure that I want to watch the movie because of some of the heavier things in it.
Did you
visually.
see the movie, Mom?
No, I tend to avoid movies that are made about a book.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because I'm usually disappointed.
Yeah.
I really am getting to that point too, where I just don't want to see a movie based on a book I've read. If it's based on a book and I never read the book, I don't care. But if I read it, I care. I care too much.
Yeah.
I'm not sure this particular book that a movie could adequately. I know they could show you the pictures of the nature,
Yeah.
but how Kaya loved it and
Yes.
talked about it
And drew it.
It was
Yeah.
her family.
Yeah.
So I have no way of thinking how a movie could adequately present that.
Yeah.
Because it's essential to the story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of that too, and I don't think the book is told from first person, but looking at exactly what you're getting at, Nana, is her internal processing of the world around her. How do you do that adequately in a movie like this when she's so much by herself? So, yeah, I'm not sure that movie is what I'm going to watch.
Listeners, if you've enjoyed it, though, good for you.
Yes.
We're not
Yes.
we're not
Oh my,
criticizing
yes.
a movie we haven't seen. We just haven't seen it, so we're questioning.
Right. And if you haven't picked up on it yet, we are very particular women over here with very particular opinions about what we spend our time
We're
on.
protective of our books,
Yes.
our stories.
Yes. Speaking of another one that I think we're very protective over watching the show or not is All the Light We Cannot See.
By Anthony Doerr.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is another luminous book. Every time I think about it, I just think of like this light emanating from it. I don't know how else to describe it. Again, a book with just unbelievably skilled writing. Short chapters, so you keep wanting to flip the pages and the story, Marie Laray, and just beautiful. Yeah. It's a book I've shared with numerous people, and most recently, Mark, my son, Julia's brother, Nana's grandson, and his wife read it together at night. Like every night they read a little
Which
bit of the
is super
book.
cute, by the way.
Yes.
And loved it. Like they'd say, okay, we're only going to read a couple chapters, and then they'd want to read a whole bunch more because they didn't want to put the book down. They did not like the adaptation because they didn't feel like it followed the book close enough. My sister Kelly liked it, but she'd read the book further back in time, so she didn't have that fresh knowledge of the plot. So, any thoughts, Mom?
I think it offered a different perspective on war. Yes, it's set right during World War II.
Yeah.
You have a young girl, Marie Laray, who she's almost angelic in her approach to life. She is totally blind. Her father taught her how to get around the city by making a model of the city and letting her just touch it with her hands and explore it with her hands. That alone was captivating.
Yeah.
She lived then most of her life, childhood and teenage part of her life alone because her dad disappeared.
Yeah.
And then you have Werner, the German young man who's actually in the German army, but such a sweet boy.
Yeah.
And their lives intertwine after a while. And Anthony Doerr does not back away from some of the horrors of war.
No.
There's there's triggers in this.
Yeah.
But it is luminous. I can't think of any other word to describe this. So the title, All the Light We Cannot See, because Marie Laray can't see light.
Anything.
And yet she's full of light in so many ways. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this is probably, if not the best, one of the best books I've ever read in my life, and intend to reread it many times.
Yes. I agree with you. It's definitely in my top books of all time list for sure.
Yeah.
And Anthony Doerr's books are anyway. I haven't read one yet, but I haven't read one yet that comes up to All the Light We Cannot See. And it did win. It's won
Quite a few
awards.
things. Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, that beauty, and you just want to share it with somebody and say, you need to see this view of war, how it affects ordinary people.
Who are just trying to live their
Yes.
lives.
Yeah.
There are just descriptions in that book that I can call to memory, like when she is living in the seaside town and she would go down to the water's edge and describe the seashells by how she felt them. Just, and the smells.
Yes.
Because you live, when you're with her, you're experiencing the world in other ways besides sight. So, Anthony just did a great job of describing what's happening with your senses. And so it makes it very recallable, like vivid in my mind. Yeah.
What's interesting, though, is I can still, those scenes where she's like down at the water, for the example, I'm picturing what's happening instead of feeling it. So it's just interesting how we're looking at a scene that has no sight to it, and yet I'm visualizing exactly what's happening. So it's just an interesting play with the senses. Next on the list is The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. And I know, Nana, you just asked to borrow my copy of this.
Yes, I'm ready for a reread.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
This is another book that Mom recommended to me years ago, though. It's been a long time since I read it. Just remember it being very gothic.
Very gothic, yes.
A big mystery.
It's a tale for sure.
Yeah, lots of odd stuff happens.
Odd people.
Yes.
Hard stuff.
Great fall read, I think. Great fall.
Or midwinter.
Winter.
Yeah.
Well, yes, you gave it to me, and then Kelly scarfed it right up. So she's reading it right now, and then it's going to come back to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, this is a book that we're sharing all over the place, you know. Yeah. It's just a fun Gothic tale.
It is.
Yeah, and a little different from what I usually read, but I loved it.
Yeah.
And there's magic and all manner of things, ghosts and cruelty.
Yeah.
There's cruelty.
Oh, yeah.
There's
For sure.
Yeah.
Deep
Bad
hurt.
things happen.
Yeah.
And
sure.
grief and pain and
a secret.
and a big secret. Yeah. So all of those fun things. It's just a fun read. And then things happen in it that you like talking about with other people.
Yeah. And I loved the writing too.
Yes. Again, Diane Setterfield, and she's done some other good stuff.
Yes, she has.
Yes. So,
I've read another of her books that I really enjoyed.
So just to throw that out there, that's not her only, and she's good at it.
Okay.
Good at those kind of dark around the edges tales.
Shadowy.
Yes.
Some magic.
Yes.
You're not really sure what's going on.
Well, another book kind of along the same lines is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern.
It is.
Dark, shadowy, not sure what's happening.
This is an all vibes book.
Yeah. Another good fall book.
Also beautifully written.
Yes.
I think.
A lot less plot than The 13th Tale, but
Very little plot.
very little. But
And I was underwhelmed with the ending. I think the ending disappointed me.
Yeah.
It took a little bit to figure out,
Right.
too, what exactly happened. Yes. And even today, I found out a detail that I thought, boy, I never caught that one. So,
But I loved spending time in the different parts of the circus, just the imagination to come up with some of the rooms. It was just wonderful.
I think that Erin Morgenstern, is it Stein or Stern? Made you smell what was at the circus, the caramel popcorn.
Oh my gosh.
You saw it. You saw the costumes. You saw the clothing. You heard the music. You smelled the perfume. You touched all the sensory kind of things like that. That's what I loved about it. I put myself right in that circus.
Yes, I agree.
Well, and I had deep FOMO of the people who had the red scarves that they wore. I wanted in that club.
So that's what it is. It's sharing the setting.
Yeah.
It's kind of, the circus exists in kind of a sinister underpinning.
Yeah.
It was created by two famous magicians who often had these battles, but they didn't use themselves.
No.
Oh, no. They always had proteges that battled to the death.
Yeah.
And I think, is it Celia and Marco?
That sounds right.
Yeah, or Marcus or something. I think it's Marco.
There's a romance that develops between these two proteges, and so they battled to the death, but not really.
Right. They were
And,
sneaky.
so that's the plot generally. And it's like Julia said, maybe that wasn't developed so well because you become so engrossed in the circus.
Yeah.
And then Celia and Marco have a romance.
Yes.
So I forgot all about the plot and just wanted that circus in my life.
So did I.
You know. And I would go to it today if it
I
ever
would.
popped up in
100%.
the field across
And I would be
the
there
street.
all night.
Yes.
All night.
So
I'd get lost in everything.
That's the loveliness
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
it. And there's also some really I don't know, neat characters in it that you care about.
Yes.
The twins.
Yes.
Poppet and Widget.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the young man who kind of, he enters from the outside and eventually becomes the owner and manager of the circus at the end.
Yeah.
I forget his name.
Yeah.
But it is that setting.
Yeah.
However she came up with that setting and those endless new rooms.
Yeah.
The snow room, the one with all the snow
Right.
and the
Oh my
ice.
God. Yeah.
And the,
The one with all the bottles where you would smell a memory.
Yeah. Just the Illusionist,
lovely.
I would just sit and watch the
Yeah.
Illusionist
Yeah.
for hours.
Yes.
So you have to
Hours.
respect that kind of imagination
Yeah.
and that kind of writing, and so I do.
Yes. That
I've
pulls
read
you
Night
in.
Circus 3 times.
Oh.
Not for the plot.
Well, no.
But and I can't wait till the circus pops up so I can go again.
Okay, another one here on the list is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies.
That's probably our newest one that we've
Yes.
shared. Yes. I think I mentioned it on the podcast last year that I was reading it and loving it. And Mom picked it up right away and Kelly picked it up right away.
And it took me a
and
year.
I told you need to read it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what a delight.
Oh my
Just
gosh.
an absolute delight.
Yeah.
This is another, you're just reading it for the fun of it. You're not expecting to get any kind of
Nope. Nothing.
like higher level philosophical learning from it. You're just having a good time, and you really do.
Yeah.
Second book is the exact same. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good time was had by all.
Yeah.
Sheer joy.
Yes. Yeah.
And I know there's no such thing as fairies. I don't
but I
care.
wish. I wish so hard.
The
Not.
Fey world.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Wendell. I just love him so much.
Yes.
But you know what? He's got a dark side too.
He does.
Oh,
because
he's.
he
I mean,
does.
Yeah.
he's.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's part.
He can completely demolish
yes.
enemies.
Without any type
Yes.
of moral
Yeah.
ambiguity. Like it just.
Well, in the first, doesn't he just have somebody like die like 5 times, like in a time loop?
Oh, that I don't remember.
I don't
I think there's a scene
Yeah.
in the first book where he's killing a fairy king,
Uh-huh.
and he's just letting the time loop go back and forth like 5 or 6 times.
That could be true. I just know he ripped a bunch of fairies limb from limb in the
Yes.
first book. And
Well, yeah.
yeah.
But it was for good reason.
It was.
Yes.
Yes.
But even Emily was like,
That
Yeah.
holy
yeah,
cow.
vengeance is a
Who
little
is this
while.
guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I just think overall, if you, and there's just a couple of things like that in there, and it fits.
Yeah.
Right.
But just the sheer joy of being with these people who are investigating fairies sometime in the future, I guess. Just the whole concept. It's delightful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's going to continue to be delightful
Yeah.
because her second book was every bit as
Yeah. It was not a
Joyful and
disappointment in any
delightful.
way.
I need to read the second.
Yeah.
So
It's a little
We
out
won't
of
say
my
anything.
genre, actually.
Yeah.
Not that I haven't read magical realism before,
Right. Sure.
but I
This
saw
is
the
more
cover
fantasy.
of that and thought, I'm reading this.
Yeah.
Whatever's in it, I'm going to like it.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's the other thing about sharing books is you kind of you move the borders out of what you consider your reading taste, and you find some new things too.
Right. I mean, we were just talking about this, about like how some of the books that we've read as a family or that have come to the show, I never would have picked up.
Right.
So like Dune,
Yeah.
Right.
still in my head.
Yes.
I'm still thinking about it. It's still
Yeah.
driving me bonkers, but I probably wouldn't have read it if.
Right. Because that's pretty hard science fiction.
Well, and I
Yeah.
use that as the example.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah.
But I don't picture you as a science fiction reader very much at all.
I dabble.
Okay.
I like spacey stuff.
Okay.
So, okay, the last book on the list that we have, although I think we could probably keep going with
Yeah,
books
we
More
could
than
probably,
likely.
yeah.
Yes.
The last one on here is The Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth Stein.
Yes. Yeah, this is another book that Mom gave me to read. And then I think you guys just saw it. Like,
Yeah.
I know Mark has read it. It's one of his, or was one of his favorite books. And you've read it.
I was pretty young when I read
Yeah.
it, like maybe end of middle school, early high school.
Yeah.
Like I was pretty young,
Mm-hmm.
which there's some stuff in there that I was pretty young for.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's also, I think it's a good story. It's sad and hard, but still good. And I do think it's an adult book that is accessible to kids younger. I'm not going to say grade school, but middle school, high school.
They do have a younger version that came out.
Do they?
Specifically for kids to read.
Okay.
I don't know why, but there's a kid version that's out.
But I felt very comfortable with you guys reading it when you did. Mark read it when he was pretty young, too.
That's true. That's true. This is another one that I've never seen the movie of.
I haven't either.
Now that I have. And it was good. And it followed the plot very closely.
Okay.
Good.
And I liked how they casted it.
Mm-hmm.
But let us not forget that this story is told by Enzo, who is
The
a dog.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And his master is a race car driver.
Mm-hmm.
Enzo learns about race car driving by watching TV
Yeah.
because he wants to know what his dad does, what his human does.
Mm-hmm.
The other endearing thing about him is he knows that his mom, his mistress, has cancer.
Yeah.
He can smell it,
Yeah.
but he doesn't know how to tell anybody.
Mm-hmm.
He feels like he could have saved her. The other thing I love about him is he's a philosopher
Yeah.
about human life.
Yeah.
And he often fantasizes about being able to run in a field unhindered,
Yes.
not on a leash, not.
Yeah.
And of course, that's heaven to him.
Mhm.
That ends up being very sad. But
Yeah.
it's the dog that's so endearing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And from, here, getting the story from his perspective.
Yes.
And
he's hilarious. He does some really funny things
Yeah.
because he doesn't like the human that he's with.
Yes.
One
yes.
of the humans. I mean, he's funny.
Yeah.
The things that he notices that human beings do.
Yes.
But anyway, there again, you just want somebody to read it so you can say, that dog.
Yes.
It's that dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just remember particularly Mark just really was.
Yes. It's a great story.
It really impressed him at the time that he read it.
Yeah. This is one that I think has to go on my reread list.
Yeah.
Because I
I might
remember
have to
everything you're
reread
talking
it.
about,
I
but
mean,
I
we're
don't
talking-
remember.
If Mark was 11 or 12, I mean, that's
10 years or
quite a
so.
while
Yeah.
ago.
Quite a long
Yeah.
time ago that was written. But good book.
Yeah.
Good.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
We have no idea what dogs think.
No.
No.
But if I could say, I thought this was maybe pretty close to what they might think. If they think in our words.
It felt
our
believable.
terms, yes. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah, great book.
I don't have any, I just don't have any issues suspending disbelief for stories. Like if somebody's going to tell me a dog is telling the story, I'm fine.
Great. Sign me
Let
up.
the
Let's
dog
do it.
tell the story.
Yeah.
If somebody says this is magical realism and there's ghosts and birds have special powers, and I'm like,
Great, bring
okay,
it on.
take me there.
We don't have to believe in it to read about it and be
enjoy it.
entertained
Right.
and enjoy it.
And understand the benefit of maybe why the author chose to tell the story the way they were.
Or to just understand that a good escape story of just nonsense and make-believe is just a good nonsense
fine.
make-believe story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff.
Even though I said I want to live in the night circus,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean I believe that whole
exists.
concept of that story or that it
Right.
exists or it's going to pop up in the field
Right.
across the road from us.
Yeah. Actually, if it did, you'd be a little.
Woo,
No, I'd be right there. I'd be right there. Let's
I'd
go.
be on the phone. Hey, don't
Hey,
waste any
the night
time.
circus showed up. Come over quick. It's only here one day.
Yeah. Oh, my. But it is just where we understand that we are not alone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. And that our perspective is not the only one. Our life experience is not the only human experience
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah. Very true.
So we share.
Yeah.
We share our books and we share our love of reading with whoever cares to listen.
Right. And sometimes they don't.
Right.
Right.
Or sometimes the other people who are not reading don't want to hear it.
Right.
Or you share a book and the other person doesn't like it at all.
Right.
Well, for instance, I'd like to say that my Julia did not like Night Circus. Did you?
I didn't like it because I read it while I was grieving.
All right.
So and
Okay.
because it's a tragic story to begin with.
Right.
Yeah.
I
And nothing, there probably nothing would have been,
at
could
that
have
point in
lived up
time,
to, yeah.
Yeah. So I think this book, just because I read it at the wrong time, is
Yeah.
why I struggled with it. But I still want to go to the night circus. I still want to experience it. I still want to be there. I think I just struggled with the minimal plot. Like it didn't it wasn't the escape that I needed it to be at that point in time.
And that funny kind of ending.
Yeah.
At least the part where they decide to resolve that the circus was built on a kind of sinister underpinning, and they just wanted to change that. Didn't want the ending to be what the magicians had intended it to be.
Yeah. Right.
But the part after that's fine, how somebody else took it over and it was all good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we told more than we should have about the night circus.
I don't think so. It's pretty well known.
But what a delight it is to share the books that you love and your love of reading with your daughters.
With your people.
With your people.
Yeah.
And to see it happening even in younger and younger generations picking up those books.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I agree.
what a delight.
It's a joy.
Yes.
Well, we covered a lot of books.
We did. And I was just thinking that I'm glad that these are all books that we liked.
Yeah.
Yes. We weren't like, hey, I'm so sorry you
Right,
recommended that to me.
Yeah. I actually couldn't think of a single book that was a recommendation that at least one of us didn't like, except for The Night Circus. I know wasn't a hit for you, Julia, but it wasn't awful.
No.
Yeah.
And again, it was the surrounding events, not the book itself.
Listeners, thanks for joining us today as we talked about how books have impacted us, how our moms and our nanas have impacted our reading, and then how we've shared some delightful books together, talked about them, laughed about them. In one case with Julia, didn't like them quite as much as everybody else, but still, it's great to sit and talk about books and share them with people we love. Yeah. I want to let you know that for our next show, Julia and I are going to be possibly introducing maybe a series that would show up occasionally on the podcast. These are going to be books that are what we would call soul food books or book hugs, just books that are delights to read, that you want to hug when you're done, that leave you feeling joy or feel like you're blessed. In a time when it just feels like the world is really heavy. I think it's nice to bring books to the show that just make you feel good.
Yeah.
So those are some of the books we're going to be talking about next week. I hope you have a great Mother's Day. If you're a mother or if you have a mother, which would be just about everybody, I think, or a mother figure in your life. I hope you take the time to celebrate that. We want to thank you again for spending time with us today here in the Book Snug, and we hope that you will join us again in the next chapter.
Bye, friends.
Bye-bye.
We'd love for you to continue today's conversation with us at the BookSnug_podcast on Instagram and at the BookSnug Podcast on Facebook. All of our episodes can be found wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as at our website, thebooksnugpodcast.buzzsprout.com, where show notes for every episode can be found. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at thebooksnugpodcast@gmail.com.
As C.S. Lewis, one of our favorite authors, famously said, "You can never have a cup of tea large enough or a book long enough to suit me." And we wholeheartedly agree.